All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your hosts, myself, no longer bespectacled Alex Baquero, and Christopher, call him Mortadella because he does not eat a bologna sandwich condit. Your American villain voices, and as always, serving up the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. We got all the places to listen, rate, review, subscribe. Chris gave a very half-hearted effort there if you're listening on audio to point you to all the right directions. But yeah, there he goes. God, life has been lifing, Chris. Before we get in, should we do a recap on where I'm at? So spoiler for everybody, actually. I guess this is gonna lead us right into it. I'm just gonna keep talking because you know what, F it. I've already been on calls for 8.5 straight hours today. Why not just keep the conversation going? So we're going to have a little bit of a role reversal today. So if you prefer it, if you think Chris is much better at my job and I'm much better at Chris's job, or just Chris is much better at my job, let us know. We're all about the competitive advantage here, and we're happy to switch in the future. I would be more than happy to give Chris my research assistant tasks on a weekly basis. But we needed to reverse our roles because I have not been able to see since about last Thursday. So little bit of backstory on me and Chris. I'm not actually sure if you even know this story. So 8 years ago, this is my PSA to all our listeners, by the way, at least for our US based listeners. I can't speak to the freshwater swimming holes of the United Kingdom, but at least in the United States, I have found out through personal experience and through anecdotal evidence of people that I know, there is a bacteria, parasite, whatever, that is in basically every freshwater body in the United States of America. And if you swim in that body of fresh water and wear contacts and do not throw out or change your contacts because the contact solution does not kill this bacteria parasite, you will wind up in a situation like I did in some situations of people that I will not name, where about a week after swimming in Lake Placid, I took out my contact and basically ripped off my entire cornea because the bacteria had eaten away at all of it. So I had a bunch of scar tissue on my eye and basically was told, hey, outside of the rarest of occasions, you're getting married, anniversary dinner, you're going snowboarding, whatever. Yes, those three are the top three considerations that I think about. You can't wear contacts. And as you get older, it's going to get worse and you will be able to wear them even less, if ever at all. And so I hit a point in my life where I was kind of getting to the point where I could never wear contacts again. And also a point where the stem cells in my eyes would no longer regenerate if I were to get any sort of corrective surgery. So PRK it was, got my eyeballs polished with lasers, and it is a much longer recovery than I was told or was expecting. So about 36 hours over the weekend, I couldn't open my eyes. I was living in this semi-hallucinogenic state of part consciousness, part sleep dreamland. Didn't really know which world I was in. And then for anyone watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on an auditory-only podcast platform, you are really missing out here. To work on Monday, when I was alone, my whole team was on PTO or traveling back from Asia. So I'm alone here, trying to negotiate talent deals and get other stuff out there. My monitors were too bright. To work, I had to wear these sunglasses indoors all day long and sit literally 2 inches from the screen with text on size 300 font just to try to read word by word as I went through. And that's how I've been sufficing until I would say about like mid this morning. So I was not able to do any research. I was not able to prepare a rundown. Chris prepared a lovely rundown for us to discuss today. And I'm just vibes guy, evidenced by these police level sunglasses that I'm wearing, where you can kind of see the rest of my screen in the reflection. And I know you could kind of see the reflection of my screen in my old glasses, so you won't have that teaser anymore of what we're about to talk about, whatever. I'm going to stop now.
Yeah.
Chris, what's up with you?
Those are sweet. Those sunglasses are sweet. I don't know what you're talking about.
And I got these 70s themed wedding
Love it.
about a year and a half ago. I felt like it really worked with my, big collared light cream suit.
Yeah, those are sweet. Also, if anyone was looking at your glasses to see the topics coming up, I think that was overkill, and I don't think we were running into that as a problem. But all good here. The Guardians are playing well. And the Browns won, as I mentioned on the last podcast that I did solo when I just shouted into the void for 15, 20 minutes. So all good here in my world right now. And we've got some news to talk about with Aston Villa and a quick game to preview. We're back in Europe. Doesn't feel like it, does it? Doesn't feel like it, vibes guy over here. Doesn't feel like we should be in Europe. Doesn't feel as exciting because we're not scoring goals and things are kind of a mess. But here we are. We are playing a familiar opponent, FC Bologna, which I actually have a prop for those of you on YouTube. I brought.
Yes, this is almost the 1-year anniversary of Chris and I's latest, I guess only for the two of us together, excursion to Villa Park, where we saw Villa beat Bologna of Italy.
That's right, 11 months ago. I had the game program here, and I was thumbing through it honestly to just look at look
just
ahead.
Flex, I use my leather bound notebook that Aston Villa gave me. You can see the little Villa 150 on there. Yeah, I use this all the time. Look at the quality of that pen. That's a beautiful pen.
It's a nice pen. Yeah. But so the vibes, if we want to talk about vibes, the vibes in this program vastly different than what we're feeling right now. And I want to make one point. Do you know what the big news in this game program dated 22nd of October 2024 is? What the big news outside of the European game, the big club news in this program? Can you guess?
I don't think I've opened it since the day, so no, I cannot guess.
It's John Duran's contract signing for 6 more years till 2030.
Well, that turned into a pretty penny 2 months later. So
it sure did. All that to say, we've got. First, I want to talk about the news that we need to break, and that is that Roberto Olabe is replacing Monchi as president of football operations, and I'm going to be honest with you. Until the name came out, I didn't know much about him. So I started looking into him to kind of see what his ideas or fit or role might be in terms of how he's going to fit in with Aston Villa and Unai Emery. Because as I talked about on the last podcast before the Monchi news came out, and as we've said repeatedly throughout the history of this podcast, everything at this club starts and ends with Unai Emery. There's not a decision that's made without his say-so or at least okay. So if Monchi stepped down or was asked to step down, that's because that's what Unai Emery wanted. And if he was allowed to step down, that's because that's what Unai Emery wanted. Now, the word from the club is that Monchi will stay on as an advisor to the club.
Well, hold on. To V Sports Group, I believe.
To V Sports, that's right. I'm sorry. To V Sports, not to the club, right? To V Sports. So it clearly was at least somewhat amicable for now. If Monchi's going to be sticking around, but I think it's an interesting move to make now, coming off of the summer transfer. I think that's the biggest point to talk about here before we talk about Olabe himself and what he might bring to the club. But the idea of making this move almost immediately, not quite immediately, but a couple of weeks after the transfer window closed, do you think that says something about the frustration with the transfer window from Monchi's perspective, from Villa's perspective, from Unai's perspective? I think any of those three could be the case, or all of those three could be the case. Like Monchi could be frustrated by the financial restrictions and implications that the club are dealing with. Emery could be frustrated because the Monchi's unable to get his top targets over the line. There are a couple of reports of that coming out. Villa ownership could be frustrated with with the direction of the window and how it's played out on the pitch. So, Alex, I'll kind of toss it to you from there. Where do you think what interests you in terms of those three positions about the timing of this move?
Can I throw a fourth one out there,
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
as like maybe potentially the lukewarmiest of those options to stay true to the ethos of this show? I Maybe it's just that it ran its course. Like you said, he's staying on as an advisor for the organization as a whole. Clearly, they still like him to some degree and think that he's got some sort of a sporting financial mind. So, if if anyone was that deeply dissatisfied with the direction of the transfers of the club of the business that was able to be done, I just don't see why they would give him that position. It's not like he's a club legend. We don't owe Monchi anything from an ambassadorial perspective. So why wouldn't you just cut bait and leave? So maybe the cycle was over. Maybe he wanted to move back to Spain. Maybe he wanted another challenge and was tired of working under these constraints. Maybe he wanted to do something bigger across the whole enterprise. And so the agreement was finish the window. We'll get someone new in for January. You look at the same thing of Tottenham and Daniel Levy leaving right after the summer window ended, and the thought being like, well, why would you give him a whole window if you intended to cut bait with him or were unhappy with the work that he was doing? Well, maybe none of that was the answer. Maybe it was just time to leave. Um, so look, if you're making me pick amongst the three options that you laid out,
I'm not
I
making you
think
pick. Those
no,
were the
I
three that
know, but
jumped to
I guess
mind.
like if all right, if the universe is removing that mine as an option and making me pick amongst the three that you laid out, I suppose I would probably say it starts with Unai being dissatisfied with what Monchi was able to bring to the club. And you made the correct point that everything at Aston Villa runs through Unai Emery. No decision is being made. I mean, they're not choosing like whether to use lemon or pine pledge in the bathrooms without Unai Emery's say so. So I would have to imagine that nothing's happening here without his approval. And there have been a lot of supposed targets where you and I have gotten on this podcast and said there's a lot of smoke around this one that haven't gotten over the line. And part of the responsibility for that probably lies under the financial constraints that Villa find themselves under. But part of it is also Monchi not being able to negotiate the right deal. So listen, I think it's probably none of the above. And I think the cycle just ended and they just realized they needed a breath of fresh air. I would say that it was probably more mutual than anything. But like, if we want to point to someone, I'm probably guessing that this was Unai's call. What about you?
Well, do you think that Villa are pledge or fabuloso? Because I'm interested
We're,
in that conversation.
we're a fabuloso household here
I hear you.
in
Yeah.
Durham. So I would hope that they made the right choice.
Yeah. um, um, I think that you're probably right that it was more mutual than anything in terms of Monchi's departure, and I think that you also make the right call that if anybody, it's Unai Emery that's going to make that decision and maybe not force Monchi out, but have a sit down with a longtime associate of his and say, hey, maybe this has run its course and we need a new direction. And that I think that we have to remember that while Monchi is much maligned by the Villa Twitter and Villa social media people, not Villa themselves, but the universe.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that he deserves a lot of credit for the amount of revenue he's been able to generate for some of the players that he's purchased and sold. And we also have to remember that he did bring in like Morgan Rogers for £9 million or whatever, rising to 16. So like that single move buys you a lot of goodwill, and maybe he lucked into it with Emery. I don't know, but I think you have to take it on a whole and look at it as a positive. I mean, it was with Monchi and Unai Emery that Villa achieved Champions League football, and you can't separate that entirely. You can't just say it's all Emery or it's all Monchi or anything like that. It's the parts working as a whole. It's the whole Brady Belichick debate in New England, right? That the two of them together are what made everybody so successful. But I do think that this is now an interesting point in Unai Emery's arc at Aston Villa, or his career at Aston Villa, because there were rumors, unsubstantiated rumors, that he was actually looking to maybe resign his tenure at Villa. This afternoon, Emery laughed those rumors off, literally laughed them off in a press conference. So I don't think that's anything substantive that we really need to talk about. So I want to move on and talk about the new sporting director.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Sorry. Before we move on from that, can I talk about Unai Emery and a few things related to him? So a lot was made of Unai Emery leaving the field against Sunderland and apparently like not addressing Monchi on the way out. Was that kind of his signal that he was done? I throw so much cold water on that. Like, Unai Emery just drew a newly promoted team who was a man down for what, like 60 minutes. You know, Wes and Sawiris could have been there, and I think he would have snubbed the two of them because he was that pissed off at the performance on the pitch, not necessarily at. How would you feel as a fan if he was like warmly greeting somebody as he kind of left the pitch there? You want him mad at everybody. So I'm putting that to the side. The only other thing that I want to call out, though, which I think you're kind of alluding to here, is Monchi absolutely deserves credit for balancing the budget and kind of keeping us afloat and making use of what I think we'll call some gray area transfers, the player swaps that we were doing, things of that sort, and being able to find someone that would pay 10 million for young Tim Arogbenham, right? What did Chelsea pay? 20 million for Kellyman, right?
Yeah.
So,
and 25 for shoot. Dang it, I shouldn't have said that because now I forget his name.
Carney Chukwuemeka. I think that was
Carney Chuck.
That was pre-Monchi.
That was pre-Monchi, wasn't it? You're right.
That was pre-Monchi. Right. He doesn't get credit for that. I'm
sorry.
So,
sorry.
All good. Point is, I brought up this concept on the last pod of you have friends that are like really good salesmen, really great negotiators, and then you've got friends who are like really thrifty buyers, and not very frequently are those the same person. So we might wind up being able to just look back at Monchi's tenure and being like, damn, getting 80 million for John Duran was a great bit of business. Getting rid of Moussa Diaby on a 5 million profit 1 year later for a guy that Unai outright said didn't really fit, probably a good bit of business, like great bit of deal. Finding some of those swap deals, like a very good salesman. Obviously, jury is out on a lot of the purchases, and we talked about that on the last pod, so like we don't need to rehash that. Everybody go back and listen to the last one. It's a good conversation that I think still is valid today. But yeah, I think just on those two things to kind of sum up Monchi's tenure, like that's probably how I'll see it. We can give him like a solid B grade for not necessarily drastically breaching the financial constraints, but obviously with limitations on what he brought in. So with that, I'll stop talking. You can respond to that if you want, or we can just look ahead to hopefully the next guy who's going to get an A+.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a really good summation of Monchi's tenure. So yeah, Roberto Olabe replaces Monchi as president of football ops, and you guys are going to be shocked to learn that he's a Spaniard from Basque. Can't believe that. What are the odds? He's most recently been at Real Sociedad as the sporting director from 2018 until yesterday. And they largely improved under his tenure from a mid-table club to a club that was challenging for top 6, top 4 until last season, where they took a little bit of a step back and were once again about mid-table in La Liga. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to get a sense of, because again, I've talked about this before, of the major leagues, La Liga is not one that I watch a whole lot of outside of when they're in Europe. When they have teams in Europe. So it's not a league in which I'm very familiar. So I wanted to get a sense of Olabe's accomplishments at his time at Sociedad. And the first thing that I noticed was that he won a trophy. He won a Copa del Rey, their first Copa del Rey in 2020 with their side. So, but the biggest thing that stands out in all of the profiles that I looked at is that he is good at identifying two things: young talent to come through the academy, and also talent that he can get in on loan as a reclamation project or as a jumpstart to a career that's stalled type project. So in some ways, I think, I should say in that way, he kind of reminds me of Monchi's loan strategy. But I think there's going to be a real focus on, or continued focus with, hopefully more young players that are ready to play close to immediately, on bringing in young talent to play quickly and develop quickly and turn this club from a buy to sell or sell to buy club to a consistent winner growing via the academy and via smart transfers. But just to give a couple of career highlights from his time at Sociedad, Isak is probably his biggest feather in his cap. Bought him from Wilhelm III and sold him to Newcastle. Really jump-started the career of Alexander Isak there, and now he's the $120 million man or whatever he is. Also, he did a lot of transfers to Arsenal. It's worth noting there, which is funny because of
Mendy most recently, right?
Yeah, that was the next one I was going to bring up. Yes, but also Mourinho and Martin Odegaard on loan from Madrid before he went to Arsenal. Again, it was a good stop for Odegaard to prepare him for his time at now Arsenal. So, and a smart move on the part of Sociedad, because they were never going to afford a player like that. But to bring him in on a short loan was a smart business decision. So he does have a resume, and he was linked to Arsenal back when their sporting director left last year, but then never made the move. So it seems like his relationship with Unai Emery may be a big part of the reason that he's landed at Aston Villa. Some impressive names, a decent record. You can't be upset about it because it doesn't seem like on its face a bad move, and most people are applauding the move here for Villa. My question to you, Alex, is what do you think his charge is, or what do you think his responsibility is? What's the focus for Olabe during his time at Aston Villa now that it's started? Now he's 24 hours in, but what is Unai Emery and what is the board telling him is the focus?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad that you did the research that backs up the vibes that I have about Real Sociedad. It's a club that for the past, I don't know, 5-10 years, half decade to a decade, has always felt kind of akin to where Villa is now, where Villa have historically been in the Premier League era, of an outside challenger that's kind of, I won't say punching above their weight, but like mixing it in with the traditional financial powers of Spanish football. And like you rightly said, they won their first Copa del Rey recently. And it does feel like a club that seemed to have a real vision, that always had some really good, highly rated, exciting players that you just were always subject to rumors from big clubs around the globe, whether they were in Spain, whether PSG, EPL, you talk about Arsenal, like all that kind of stuff. Maybe then an ethos a little bit more to, and this might grind your gears a little bit because people say Villa should act like this, a little bit akin to like a Brighton in recent years, right? Finding some unheralded players or reclamation projects, turning them good, and ultimately selling them on for a huge profit. So, what do I think the board is bringing him in for, then I don't think that it is a concessionary move to say that Villa are now going to become Brighton. Let's put that to bed now. This is an ambitious ownership group, an ambitious owner, and if they said, "Hey, we're coming in so that you can just tell us how to sell up so that we can consistently be between 6th and ninth," I don't think Unai signs off on that, and as we said, Unai runs everything. So, where do I think he can make incremental benefit on on the foundation that Monchi laid? I think that the identification of young talent that is either ready to play or very shortly will be ready to be sold on for a huge profit is probably the biggest area where he can provide a level up on where we are right now. And our favorite athletic reporter, Chicken Little, wrote about this a little bit earlier this year on Villa's new financial model being finding these guys across the continent for, let's say, between 5 and 9 million euro, Acosta, Ashkin, or whatever, bring them in, develop them a little bit, and then you just need one or two of them to hit for a $20 to $30 profit that all of a sudden pays for 6 guys and maybe means that you don't need to sell a Morgan Rogers, for example. And what we saw, and what I think was a source of frustration for both of us, was that these players came in and it seemed like Unai Emery very quickly said, nah, he ain't it, and shuffled him on. And now we've got these buy clauses in deals that are essentially just what we paid for him, net zero profit. And so I would think that Monchi was already a good seller. So they'll tell him, keep doing that. Keep getting 80 millions for the John Durans. If we sell Morgan Rogers, it better be for 150 million. But what we need you to supplement is finding more often the next Morgan Rogers, but probably Morgan Rogers from Lithuania, Morgan Rogers from Spain, Morgan Rogers from Portugal, Morgan Rogers from name any other European country. And we need to hit on those more often. And I think if we can do those two things, reclamation projects are what they are. We'll always be probably willing to take a punt on some loan fees there. But I think those are probably the two things: keep selling well and identify more young talent that actually will contribute or sell for, I'll conservatively say, 3x their value within a year or two, so that we can remain more financially sustainable moving forward. That feel fair?
I think that's right. And I think you're dead on. If there was a point that Monchi fell short, it was in the buying, right? You can yep. Look and see at some of his buys that didn't work out, and in the buying of young talent that Unai Emery did not want to implement. So that, I hope that can change, because we need that sort of talent and ability to be able to progress through the system, to fund future transfers and all those things, at least for the time being. So I think you're spot on. I don't think I need to add anything more to that. So I think it's an exciting time now for Villa. I think that this is something that, while it's not like changing the manager or anything like that, I think it's something that can maybe change the mood around the club, because right now it seems pretty dark. And I think that hopefully this results in positivity around the ground and around the club going forward. And I think we're really going to get a better idea come January of where this is going to go. But enough about that. We have a European game to look forward to, which again doesn't feel like we do.
Look forward. I'm not sure you want to use the term "look forward to."
Look ahead to. I meant forward as in ahead.
View with impending dread.
Oh, that's a selling point right there. So it's Bologna, again, a familiar opponent for Aston Villa. Villa played them 11 months ago in Champions League. What do we know about Bologna so far this season? They are actually a lot like Aston Villa based on their numbers and statistics. They are currently sitting, although they're sitting better than Villa are, because they're not going to be relegated to Serie B. But they are currently sitting 11th in Serie A. they are struggling to score, much like Aston Villa, but they are scoring significantly more than Villa. They've scored 5 goals in 5 games, but they've been shut out twice, and they are only averaging 11 shots per game, and they're actually overperforming their XG. 3.85 is their XG. So they are also struggling to find ways to attack in Serie A. So I'm to me, it kind of is interesting how these two teams are probably looking at each other. Both may be looking and saying, this is an opportunity for us to maybe get right and put some balls in the back of the net here. And I looked at their lineup and how they typically play. So it's pretty consistently a 4-2-3-1, and they attack a good deal down the left. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Matty Cash if he's the right back, which I assume he's going to be, assuming his injury is all right. But the right side is going to be where they're looking to attack. The player, I love the player that is their primary attacker. His name is Riccardo Orsolini, which incidentally,
we spoke about him last year.
Right. And I was looking for a player who was the most like a pasta dish at an Italian restaurant, and it was him. What? That's great stuff. That's great stuff. Like, I'll take a Riccardo Orsolini, please. So he has so far this season, he has 2 goals. He averages 3 shots per game, and he's gotten no assists, however. And most of their assists seem to come from the midfield and actually the right and left back. But so I think this paints an interesting picture because you have 2 sides that are attacking challenged at the moment. In a European game, I don't know how it's going to go, but I think both sides will fancy their chances against the other because they both see the other opponent as not wholly themselves at the moment. So I think that Orsolini is going to prove to be a challenge. I think that if Villa's back 4 can get it together, I think that Villa will be in fine shape to play well and potentially win this game. I just don't know that I've seen enough from Villa to make me believe that they're good enough to win at this moment against a team like this. Alex, your thoughts?
Great research, Chris. Bravo. We might need to give you this job full time. So, it's funny. I was thinking back to the Bologna preview that we did. I gotta stop saying that before people think I don't actually know what they're called. But
I just called one of their players a pasta. So
Bologna. Yeah, we're really playing up the stupid American stereotype on this one.
You are what you are, man.
You are what you eat. So I was thinking back to our Bologna preview last year, and we did speak about Orsolini because he was their most prominent playmaker at the time. And it's funny, they were in a similar boat to where they are now, if I remember correctly. They were struggling in the league, and you don't pay attention to La Liga. I don't really pay attention to Serie A. It's a league that I don't rate. My hot take is that they actually take a lot of washed up MLS players who wind up being successful there. So yeah, get at me, Italians. It's not the Serie A of our youth. So once we kind of dispatched with Bologna, and once we dispatched with Bologna and they were languishing at the end of the table, it didn't really follow them through the end of the year. I was kind of shocked to find out that they wound up in Europe just because I remembered how bad they were leading into and during that game that you and I saw. So I guess a year passes and not much changes on their side of the table. I do think that Villa had been struggling a little bit leading into that game. You and I were worried that Villa was gonna lay a dud. I think it is generous of you to say that Villa would fancy anyone at this point. Bologna might fancy playing Villa. I don't know that Villa fancies playing anybody across the continent of Europe. I am expecting a struggle. I am not expecting a lot of goals. And I don't think that this is going to be our get right game. Europe lights are bright, and this team is not rising to the occasion. It is in fact shrinking from it at the moment.
Wow. So we are really positive heading into this game.
Why would we be
No,
positive?
I agree. I
We
agree.
just drew 10-man Sunderland.
Yep.
What do we have to be positive about?
I agree, buddy. I recorded a podcast about
walking
that.
back through that dressing room door.
Yeah. He might want to, the way he's playing. You know, I think. But no, I do think it's going to be a slog for both teams. I really do. I hope, because I'm an Aston Villa fan, as you are, I hope that Villa can find the breakthrough, because we've talked about it before, and I especially have talked about it. I believe in the importance and the power, so to speak, of seeing the ball hit the back of the net. You know, when you're feeling good, you play better because you've got confidence. And I mean, it doesn't matter what you're talking about: soccer, other sports, life, your job, you know, your home life, whatever it may be. Everything is better when you're playing with confidence, so to speak. So I really want to see some guys at least make the keeper move. Like that. Where are we at? That's what I'm asking for. Like just get the keeper moving off his line and having to make some stops early, because that's, I think, what is mostly lacking is the decisiveness in front of goal. We've said it a million times. This team is best when moves come quickly and there's not a lot of time to think between phases or movements during attack. So give me some classic Unai Emery type goals, getting to the byline and firing it back across toward the middle of the box to get a tap in goal from Ollie Watkins or something like that. Just give me something where I can see what we're trying to build here, because we don't have that right now. We don't have any kind of attacking identity. And the sooner that we can break that, both physically and mentally, I think the better off this team's going to be. Do you have anything else you want to add as we talk about this game, Alex? Anything, you know, again, it doesn't really feel like a European match.
Yeah, I don't. I think we can hop right into lineups. So I think Villa is going to go strong. Emmy in goal, Matty Cash, Konsa, Mings, probably Luka Dean, although I would like to see Ian Maatson just be a little more aggressive. I guess McGinn and Kamara again, most likely. Yeah. On the right, you know, I was interested to see Gasson get the start. I did not expect that over the weekend. Like I said, I was blind, so you're going to need to tell me a little bit how he did. I didn't hear much about his name kind of doing anything. So I'll say Daniel Malen gets the start on the right, I suppose. I think that Harvey Elliott might come into the center. He seems to be getting more and more minutes and actually doing something with those minutes. He seems like someone that Unai Emery is invested in. I guess double entendre there. He's invested in him personally, but we have financially invested a lot in him and will ultimately be buying him. So like there is a lot of reason to get him integrated. Morgan Rogers on the left and Ollie Watkins up top. Do you have any changes from that?
No, that is exactly the lineup I've got, actually. Yes, 100%. And I agree. So Gasson was, nah. I mean, like,
same as he has been.
Yeah, you can see the speed. Like the speed is there. I think that my opinion is that Unai Emery is going to want him to be more like a Leon Bailey than he's going to want to play like. He's going to want to keep him wider, whereas Gasson is going to want to come inside. And so I wonder if we're not going to have a Moussa Diaby type situation where it was always Diaby coming inside and never fitting in with the system Emery wanted to play. The difference being that Gasson, I think, may be more amenable to coaching at this point in his career. I don't know. That's 100% speculation.
Diaby was younger.
He was. You're right.
2 years younger.
I guess that's just me projecting more than anything, because like I don't have, and like I was getting there, I don't really have a reason for why I think that's the case, outside of like Gasson's a couple interviews he gave talking about Unai Emery, but that, so it's not backed up by anything more than my speculation here, but anyway, I have the exact lineup you have.
Can I say something on Gasson real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I do kind of like you're sticking on the vibes of he just seems like a more coachable guy. Those kind of intangibles there. I'm going to stick on the vibes that I got in preseason and the scouting reports that I read on him. I think while he is part of this positionless front three that we think Unai wants to implement, doesn't change the fact that I still believe his profile was best served in the role that Morgan Rogers is currently playing. And Unai Emery is not moving Morgan Rogers out of that role. I think the purchase was initially made with the intention of Morgan Rogers playing centrally and Gasson playing in that left forward, inside attacking mid role. So while he can play on the right and certainly played a decent bit there last year, I don't necessarily think from what I've read, it's his best position based on how Villa play. So I think it is a little bit of a square peg round hole shunting him out there. And now you run into the Moussa Diaby problem that you were just articulating.
Yeah. So I think you're right. So with all that said, Bologna, we're back to Bologna now. What do we have for a score?
The word baloney just says 0 to me, so I'm going to say 0-0.
Boy, this is a boring podcast because I've got 0-0.
Like a circle slice of bologna is kind of.
I also have 0-0. We, honest to God, folks, we did not share notes. This is.
I couldn't read notes. I've been through this. Like there was nothing we were sharing in advance.
I hope we're both wrong again, and I hope that Watkins gets a goal, and I hope Rogers gets a goal, and I hope Rogers looks good. But until I see it at this point, I can't confidently predict it. So that's why I went with 0-0, and Bologna's struggles on paper make me think that they're going to continue to struggle as well. My concern, honestly, is that they're going to have the better chances and they might nick one with the way Villa's been playing. So, but I've got 0-0, point in Europe. Again, even though this feels absolutely not at all like a European game, like it did last year, but we soldier on. And Villa have Fulham on the weekend, Sunday. We will not be doing a preview for that as Alex continues to recover. And,
we both get smarted by work. Let's be honest. This just isn't paying the bills quite yet.
And what are we going to do? Another 50 minutes on how they're not going to score against Fulham? So hopefully I'm wrong about that.
Hear our melodic voices, Chris. The people just want to hear us talk.
But we will do a post game Fulham recap after the Fulham game, and I guess until then, Alex. So sometime on the weekend, probably on Sunday night, we'll record that and release it Sunday night, Monday morning. But until then, up the European Villa.
Up the Villa. I like the little switch up that we did there. Hi, Mom and Dad.